I'm Vice Chair of Cheshire LMC. I also am the sessional GP representative, and I chair the education group as well. So quite it gives me a lot of opportunities to have very wide-ranging discussions. And I'm joined also by the LMC exec team. So William, as you know, is on the call, and also I've just checked on the attendees, and we've got our medical director, Daniel Harl, and our chair, David Ward, with us also, because we really want to give you an opportunity to feel heard locally by your LMC, but also nationally as well. And I am really, really delighted that we have got two very high-profile national speakers with for us tonight, with Dr. Mark Steggles, who is the chair of the BMA Sessional GP Committee, and Dr. Richard Fieldhouse who's chair and founder of the National Association of Sessional GPs. Tonight has been born really as a result of the work survey that I know a lot of you participated with last year. It provided really quite a bleak picture about how work has dropped off a cliff for many locum and salary GPs. And as a result of that, we wanted you to all feel like you had a voice, that you're seen and that you're heard. And tonight is really about understanding the reality, but also about what we can do for the future, and feel hopefully energized and have a positive direction out of this. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over now to Mark, who is our first speaker. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Shanna, and thank you to yourself and Will for inviting me, and thanks to everyone for attending. So those who don't know me, I'm Mark Steggles, and I'm chair of the Sessional GP Committee at the BMA. So that's the committee with represents sessional interest across the UK, alongside the national GPCs who represent all GPs in each nation. So thanks for inviting me along to talk today. We'll try and keep it upbeat, but obviously we know this is quite a difficult situation, incredibly difficult situation for sessional GPs across the country at the moment. So I just wanted to talk through kind of how we got to where we are at the moment, and what steps we're taking next. So towards the end of 2023, as the sessional committee, we started to hear from members from all over England that they were struggling to find work. All of a sudden, it seemed like the locum market had really changed quite rapidly. And we were hearing from locum members who'd been working for long periods of time, years and years, that suddenly their regular shifts and regular work that they were getting had suddenly reduced dramatically, and in some cases disappeared altogether. So this was obviously a huge concern. It came on quite rapidly, and we started as a committee to raise this issue in the BMA, try to take it out to external bodies and in our lobbying. And I think the first barrier we came up against was data. There's no national data that tracks how many GPs are looking for work, or how many locum opportunities there are, how many salaried vacancies there are in the NHS at any one time. So proving the unemployment issue was a real difficulty, and getting people to believe that this was an issue was a huge challenge for us as a committee to get people to understand the scale of the issue and what was going on. We'd gone from a position where practices were struggling to recruit. They couldn't find enough GPs to pick up the post, and that had been the situation for so long. Changing that mindset and going, well, we've now got GPs who are looking for work who can't find it was a huge challenge. Around the middle of last year, we launched a locum survey of locum GPs across the UK to find out the scale of the problem, who was affected, to try and narrow it down as best we could. Nationally, it's difficult to get that local granularity and figure out what's going on a super local level, which is where LMCs come in really importantly. So we got a huge response. We got over 1,800 responses to that locum survey, and the results were shocking. It was 84%, or over 80% of locum GPs had either struggled to find any work, or were seeing huge reductions in their work, so struggling to find enough work to maintain what they were doing previously. Off the back of that, we were able to garner some media interest to make noise about this. We were able to take this data forward to government, within the BMA, the NHS England, and say this is the scale of the problem. This is a real problem, and it needs solving. So the survey was useful in a world where we don't have real data about GP vacancies. Off of the back of that, we had elections and a new government come in. And I think they realised quickly that this was an issue. And within the first few weeks, we saw some response to the issue of GP unemployment. So as you'll know, it was announced that in October last year, there would be a £82 million ring-fence fund for the employment of GPs within the first 2 years of qualifying. Whilst any money for employment of GPs is welcomed, we made it very clear, and we were worried that this was not the solution. We knew, yes, newly qualified GPs were really struggling to find work because there wasn't that much out there. But we knew this affected so many more people. This is affecting GPs across the entire range of your career. It's not just newly qualified. This is well-established GPs who've been working for years. It was affecting everybody. The R's scheme that's not its only flaw, that it's restricted to the first 2 years of qualifying to be eligible to take one of these roles. The pay was particularly low, so it was set as a reimbursement through PCNs, primary care networks, groups of practices. So they'd set the pay at an extraordinarily low level, and we know it was not reflective of what GPs should be earning or what they earned in the market. So that was another one of our concerns we took to NHS England when they brought this scheme in or first proposed it. And again, the other issue is working across a PCN. We know PCNs vary in size. Sometimes it's one practice is one big PCN. Sometimes it's up to 15 practices. And coming in as a newly qualified GP into a working situation where you're potentially working across a number of different practices, all with different teams and different ways of working, how massively daunting that can be. So we were clear that this was not the solution. This wasn't going to solve GP unemployment and underemployment. But it was the answer that we got every time we raised unemployment as an issue. Our scheme's been running for about 4 months now, and it's not had a huge uptake. We were told 1,000 GPs would be employed through this role, but the data seems to suggest much lower levels than that, in a couple of hundreds, really, full-time equivalent GPs. So we knew this wasn't just affecting locums as well. So our initial survey was just for GP locums, where the problem initially started. We knew this was a lack of salaried positions. People weren't replacing GPs when they were leaving. They weren't recruiting new GPs. So we knew this expanded across the whole raft of GPs, even partnership positions. If you're a sessional GP who aspires to partnership, finding one of those is really difficult. And then you've got the other areas like out of hours, urgent care settings. Because so many GPs are looking for jobs at the same time, the competition rates have really shot up, and that's having a huge impact on GPs' ability to find work. Alongside kind of gathering data, getting information, making noise, trying to lobby for the solutions, we had to look at, well, why is this happening? Why are we suddenly seeing a big problem? And I think it took us some discussion and some time to kind of identify the key areas. So we know general practice as a whole has been massively underfunded for years and years and years, and costs are going up. So as small business owners and running a small business, your costs are going up. Your income is stagnating. The funding you're receiving to run your service is reducing. That was a massive factor. So we knew core funding for practices to be able to employ locums, to create salaried jobs, even partner positions. That needed to improve, and that's something we've pushed for. We know in England seemed to be a front runner for this compared to the other nations, with GP unemployment first occurring there and being much of a bigger problem. Not that it's not emerging in the other countries. Additional roles was £1.4 billion a year of funding coming to primary care networks, which could not be used to employ GPs. It could be used to employ all the additional roles that were in the spec, so pharmacists, physiotherapists, physicians associates, a whole raft of different roles, and that's a huge investment. But when you're spending your money on that, you're not spending it on GP recruitment. So we knew the ring fencing of ours was a big issue as well. We're also training more GPs than ever. So we're looking at about 3,000 to 4,000 GP registrars being trained every year. And it's a huge failure of workforce planning. You can't train more GPs and not fund the creation of more GP roles and not expect issues at the other end. So there's multifactorial. So as I was saying, as the sessional committee, we knew this wasn't just affecting locums. We needed to show that it was affecting GPs across the remit. So we recently had our online rally, which was we had nearly 1,000 GPs register to attend for the online rally. I hope some of you could have joined. It is recorded, so you can find it if you missed it. Where we brought people from across the remit of GP representation from the Royal College, from other BMA committees and LMCs to come and talk to GPs about the issue and how they can support them and what we've been doing. So we had our rally, and off the back of the rally we had the survey. And survey has shown really what we expect. And lots of people are struggling to find enough work. Over 50% of GPs who responded are struggling to find work. 15% can't find any work. So it really provides us with more data, more evidence to say this is still a problem despite what's been done, and it's affecting all the other GPs. So moving forward off of the back of that, again, we're trying to make noise about this. We're trying to encourage media interest. Our colleagues at the BMA media team are working up press releases, and we've had some pick up from Sky News already. So we really need to make this known in the public sphere, and we've been trying our best alongside our BMA colleagues. Alongside, so once we'd had the rally and the survey results, we've launched a tool as well. So we know previously GPC England, when the national insurance contribution problem came up, there was a right to your MP, where lots of practices, lots of GPs wrote to their MPs to raise this issue and get some discussion in Parliament about this and make it an issue for the people who are running the country and making decisions. So we've launched a right to your MP tool, and it's something that you can modify and describe your situation and let your local MP know you are a GP, you are in their constituency, you're looking for work, and you can't find it. Explain a bit about how that's affecting you. You talk to anyone about this problem, if they don't know about it, they're utterly shocked. There's no one I have spoken to and talked about who didn't know about it previously responds with apathy. They are shocked, and it makes no sense. We've got GPs working as hard as they can to try and meet patient demand, and we've got GPs who could be supporting them, who could be in practices providing care for patients, reducing waiting lists, but can't find work. It doesn't make sense. So part of that, our rally is to try and garner some kind of collective feeling amongst sessional GPs to say, we need you to write to your MP, we need to get you involved and linked in with your LMCs and local representatives to make sure that this issue is heard and it remains a problem that needs solving. So that's where we are at the moment, and that's the plan. Obviously, it's a moving situation, an evolving situation. So GPC England met today to discuss the contract negotiations, and we'll be hearing soon about the outcome of those. The government announced £889 million uplift to GP funding, and we hope some of that will create jobs for GPs. It needs to. So things are moving, but we can't let up, and we need you as sessional GPs to be talking to your local representatives, talking to your national representatives, telling us your experience on the ground, telling us what you want us to do about it, what you think we should be doing as a profession about it. But yeah, it's something we're going to need to keep pushing, keep raising noise about. Working as a GP it's a tricky thing. We see a lot of people moving to kind of portfolio working because it's nice to have a bit of variety in your day. And I think this is driving people to do that a bit more. We do have a lot of different settings we can work in. And whilst we're best in practices and serving our communities and working with our patients to doing what we train to do, we need to be a bit more diverse, and we need to look at other areas we can work in. But I know it's incredibly difficult, and it's easier said than done. But we'll keep making noise, and we will keep pushing this and seeking the solutions that need to happen to resolve it, because it is a mad situation. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to take questions at the end as well, as mentioned earlier, once Richard's spoken. Thank you, Shanna.
Thank you, Mark. That's brilliant. So we'll move on now to Richard. Without further ado, thank you.
Lovely, thanks everyone. I've got a little presentation which I'll hopefully just whisk through. So here we go. So I've called my little bit about, I've called it reigniting the GP locum market, and thanks Mark for that. Really interesting, some really good points. Now let me get onto my slide. There we go. So yeah, I think everything Mark says about the absolute the situation we've got across the whole of the UK at the moment with these plummeting bookings. Every single ICB GP locums are, and I'm talking specifically about GP locums, have been complaining of lack of work, much less work to go around, and it's been headlines for a good year now. But actually, what I want to talk about is a particular angle that we're coming at from the NASGP here, which is kind of more about the exception to that rule. Is why is it different in some parts of the country? Now, in some parts of the country, the 7 ICBs we've been working with as an organisation now for some of these areas for 4 years in collaboration with local LMCs. In those areas, we got those ICBs to fund a platform through which locums do their bookings. It's the NASGP's Locum Deck platform. And in those 7 ICBs, this is the data that shows that over the last couple of years, the number of sessions booked per practice has been very, very stable. It's been around the sort of 2,500 to 3,000 sessions per month consistently now for 2 years, despite the fact that those practices in those ICBs have had the same underfunding as any practice elsewhere around the country, and also the same hours allocation. So why are these practices different? In Mark's rally last week, there was really what it was mentioned about particular areas that are struggling, like Manchester and the Midlands. These are areas, like many other areas, where they've been relying on a very outdated, I think not fit for purpose modality of getting bookings, of how locums get their work. These are jobs boards. These are so it's like a 200-year-old invention. And in these situations, the customers, bizarrely, the customers, in this case the practice, are able to broadcast what they want to the suppliers, in that case us as GP locums, and in response the GP locums are then scrambling and competing and undercutting each other to get this work. We hear this time and time and time again. We're hearing it not just from locums, but we're hearing it from practice managers as well. And it's a really, it's a rather unpleasant situation. The providers of the services, GP locums, are actually having to be really desperate because of all the above, all that Mark's been saying about lack of work and everything, and the customers, the practices, when they then put out an advert, are being completely overwhelmed by dozens and dozens of responses to just the offer of one session, and even to the point where these practice managers are getting phone calls in the middle of the night over a weekend. To use this tool, WhatsApp or the jobs board, is just not something that really is fit for this purpose, for practices to book GP locums, for GP locums to get work. It's a real mismatch between supply and demand, and it's not a good way of doing it. It's demeaning, it's humiliating, and the practices feel it's they tell us it's almost like a heart sink situation when they got to put out an advert. They know they're going to spend ages having to politely turn down then dozens of locums who then applied for the job. And the trouble is with this system of jobs boards is it hands all the cards, the practices hold all the cards. And that method of working doesn't exist in any other profession, in any other country in the world. It seems to be the only market where where a customer is after a service or a product. This seems to be the only system we have in the GP locum market in these areas, where the customer dictates the terms, dictates the rates, and it just doesn't work, and it's not been working. And in those areas where we're talking to our members across those sorts of areas, they happen to be particularly struggling. So what can we do about it? How can we reverse this? How can we kickstart locum work? How can we get these areas like some of the areas where the work is more has been steady and stable for a good 2 to 3 years? So let's look at what some Nobel Prize winners have done about this. So this is Alvin Roth. He came up. Alvin Roth is the guy who is behind the organ donation system in the United States, a massive market for supply and demand of donated organs, where everyone benefits, the supplier and benefits, and the recipients benefit. He's also the person who designed the UK's junior doctor placement scheme upon graduation qualification. That's why hospitals every August have cover. It's because he's got the system that doesn't have double booking, where the junior doctors have got a job most of the time, and the hospitals have got some cover for their patients. And then you've got the likes of Amartya Sen, who his Nobel Prize with his work on not too dissimilar a problem, but that of famine. And actually, intuitively, people think, well, famine, yeah, that's lack of food. Actually, it's not lack of food. There's food, but what's the problem? The problem is the lack of distribution of that resource. And I think what that graph I showed you is and I'll show you again in a minute, is suggestive of. So when we put these principles to locum work, you've got the sort of situation in many areas at the moment where you've got this imbalance, and with a practice holding those cards, and then you've got these struggling locums and everything that goes from there. What we've been doing with NASGP with a completely different type of platform that is very just simply measures what is done elsewhere in the world and in the rest of the country in any other market, if you're going into a restaurant and as a customer and purchasing a meal, you as the customer, you don't demand the terms, you don't demand the price. That's set by there's much more of a balanced happy medium where you as the customer and the restaurant benefits. And that's the same for booking a hotel, booking a flight, when you hire an accountant or an electrician or a plumber. It's the same. Both parties have got to benefit. There cannot be this scramble, this bun fight, this demeaning race to the bottom. So this is just that graph slightly bigger. The dark line are the total sessions worked per month across these 7 ICBs. And the top line actually is the dotted line is actually what the practices wanted to book. So the actual towards much more recently, you see the fill rate is in some cases almost 100%. So the practices are very, very happy getting all their cover. We've all but that's not to say in these areas, these 7 areas, that locums are still not getting all the work they want. They could work a lot more sessions than they're actually able to. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making here is that the practices, if we're going to say in this area, well, you know, the practices are booking less locums, they're not booking less locums, they're booking the same number of locums. But if you're a locum in these areas, you are absolutely struggling because there are a lot more locums out there. The work is spread a lot more thinly. Today, there are 3,000 more GP locums than there were pre-COVID. So that it is still very much a problem. All locums on the ground are struggling, but there are some ICBs, there are some practices which are still carrying on booking the same number of locums. And so in this situation, in these 7 ICBs, blaming lack of funding and blaming R's roles, I don't think is helpful, because tackling that problem is not necessarily the solution, although I think very much it is part of the big solution is as we've heard from Mark, is we definitely need more funding, because there's a lot more locums could be engaged. But one thing particularly about this model I'm talking about is actually it's not simple. It's not just something, oh, let's try and use this platform and see if that will help, or let's try this different way of working, let's just get rid of WhatsApp and everything will be fine. No, that's not what I'm saying. There's a thing called Metcalfe's law. So when your dad or your granddad bought his first fax machine, and none of his mates down the pub had a fax machine, his fax machine was pretty useless. He didn't get any faxes and had no one to send it to. But that's what Metcalfe's law is based on. But as more people started to buy them, his fax machine became more and more useful. And that's how Alvin Roth's model of organ donation works across the states. You've got to have everybody using the same system, and the same in the UK with hospitals. You've got to be on the same exchange and martyrs, or the exchange board for the junior doctors and the hospital posts, because they're on different systems that don't interconnect. It's not going to work. So success of any model, any of those Nobel Prize winning models, means you've got to have a widespread adoption, which is why it's worked so well in those 7 ICB areas I've mentioned. And that's Bob ICB, Suffolk, and all the Essex counties, Hampshire and Isle of Wight, Frimley, Gloucestershire. It's all worked in those places because pretty much all the practices use it, and pretty much all the locums use it, and the LMC has been very active in those areas, getting encouraging uptake. So as Shana was saying earlier on, and from the rally last week with Marcus, it's this change of mindset. It's not just the practices change of mindset, but also us as locums. It's moving away from being on that back foot in using systems like a jobs board, where we're very passively waiting. I was speaking to a locum the other day, might even be on this call actually, and was saying, he tells his children, please kids, don't look on your smartphone all the time. But dad's on his smartphone all the time waiting for that WhatsApp message to come through. It's so demeaning, and it's about moving away from that to a system that's actually much more fit for purpose. In Cheshire, we've got, I mean, some of you here will have received an email from me yesterday about this meeting. I sent that email to 184 members of NASGP yesterday. So some members and a few old members as well. And what we've been doing as well over the last 3-4 months is speaking. And we've got 11 of you now signed up to actually what we're doing as an organisation is in a few other areas as well, Sheffield and soon Bristol and Bath as well, is offering completely free use of this our platform to help kickstart those areas. We're offering completely free for 12 months. We're also speaking to two different LMCs over the next few weeks. We've actually one very nearby here where we're speaking to next week about how we can get things moving again, get that momentum going. And hope with that, it's going to take time. It's going to take a while for practices to sign up, and of course the platform is totally free to practices as well, to get them to sign up and start using it. Shana, you sent a message about about locum rates, and actually in terms of data, the locum deck platform has over 7,000 bookings per month going through it across every town and county across the country, pretty much. And this is all our data, all our locum deck data. This is some 100,000 locum sessions over this period, and those are the average rates per region. And you've got there an average of £85 across England during that time. So I'll tell you why I put Suffolk. Suffolk is one of the ICBs with their LMC. You've got the funding and all their practices and locums use locum deck. And actually around about this time here, where there's an increase in the number of where there's a bit more stability. I think there's these rather outlying peaks and troughs for Cheshire early on, is because that's, I think, more artifactual. There weren't many locums using the locum deck platform at that stage, but much more recently now, in the last couple of months, we've got more locums in Cheshire using it. We've got about 60-70 sessions back in Cheshire at the moment, and just the average. What's really interesting is the average locum rate in across the country being about £85 an hour at the moment. When we take the last 2 years for SNE, that's actually a bit higher, and it's actually SNE kind of bucks the trends for an average locum rate. Our other areas aren't as high as that. But what this is just finally, this is the top line, the number of sessions worked every month through locum deck in the SNE ICB area. 80% of those are booked, instant book by the practices, where the practice managers click and book a locum. No bun fights, no WhatsApp messages, no who wants to do a session for 70 quid an hour or whatever. This is what the locums terms, the locums rates, the locums pension on the platform, and the practices book them direct. It works really well, and the practices love it. And the lower line is all our locum deck data for Cheshire and Merseyside, which actually as an ICB is about 3 to 4 times the size of SNE. And I genuinely believe that but we've got very few practices in Cheshire using locum deck at the moment. A few are, but and a relatively small number of GP locums as well. But our offer to you is, if that's something that you want as a tool, as a practical tool to use locally, to start getting practices away from a rather obsolete, not fit for purpose system that was not designed for this type of transaction, to move to something that's more sophisticated, more fit for purpose, and actually built to give a much more level playing field and a much more fair and transparent way for locums to be hired by the practices where they work. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. That's fascinating, particularly the stats that you've just shown about the way that work has gone in Cheshire compared to SNE. I wondered if you don't, well, perhaps, I don't know, I'm stepping out of turn now, Helen.
Carry on.
And thank you to Mark as well for presenting the national picture, which I think really does mirror what we've noticed in Cheshire, and I think that's really important for everyone to know. It isn't just particular to our area. This is a national problem, and a very big problem. I've got lots of things going through my head about questions to ask, but I think it's probably best to open. It's not about me, it's about the opening up to the floor. So I wondered if anyone had any questions that they might like to ask.
just pop your virtual hand up or type in chat if you've got any questions. I know we've had a few questions coming in, and a couple of them have also been answered in chat. In chat, and this will be shared afterwards with the recording, you've got a link to the Email Your MP tool, and you've also got a press release on the results of the latest survey. So thank you for responding to those two questions in a very, very timely way, Mark. Whilst we had presentations, William popped a few questions in as well, and one of them was for Mark. Any tips or advice on getting our sessional colleagues to get their voice heard at the national level? Is there anything other than you said in your talk and the Email Your MP tool that you've already shared there?
So, I mean, every region will have a BMA representative. So, as a sessional committee, there's 16 of us across the whole UK, and we have a dedicated sessional GP email, which I will pop in the chat when I find it. I'm frantically searching for emails to pull them up, but I can pop that in. You'll also have a representative on your national committee, so your GPC England representative, who are your BMA representatives nationally. So I will pop both of those emails into the chat, and you can contact the committee, and they can direct you to your local. I'm struggling off the top of my head to remember who covers Cheshire, but I will find out for you. But contacting us as the Sessional GPs Committee, we're your national representative. We cover the UK, but and your national GP committee as well will have a local representative. So I will pop those details in the chat as well.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Do please put your questions in the chat or just raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. I'm going to go to another one at the moment from William. When colleagues are looking for a job in the local area, what are your tips on making the CV application stand out from the crowd? Shall we go to Richard first?
I would make my top tips would be make them really short, brief, have a photograph of you on it, get your auntie to check the spelling, because aunties are really good at grammar, and they love you, but they will absolutely tell you if you've your faults. They'll point them out to you. So get your auntie to look at it. What we on NASGP, we've got an automatic CV generator. You type your bits in it and it spits out a very nice, beautiful formatted CV, which over half of our bookings are using that format. It's just simple. When the practice is hiring you, kind of in the back of their mind is, one of the things they're really looking for is someone that they can trust, someone they know has got a really good attention to detail, and that they're not going to basically create a complaint or create work for other people, because they're running a very, very tight ship, and people are very fragile. It's a high risk environment. So if you've got mistakes on your CV and even simple grammatical errors, that can be absolutely, particularly if they're shifting through lots of CVs, that can be a real red flag to them. So yeah, get your auntie involved, or if you haven't got an auntie, borrow someone else's.
Would you like to add anything to that, Mark?
Yeah, I think Amy Small mentioned at our rally when she was talking to the online rally, getting your face out there as well. So CVs are all great and good, but getting to know people, getting to know the practice managers locally, getting in touch is a really personalised way of doing it. And I think it says much more about you and gets your face known, gets your name known among local practices. as opposed to sending off a piece of paper which will often look very similar to other people's. I mean, we've all come through the same training routes. We may have different skills that we're able to offer, but yeah, CV, to getting yourself across in a CV is not the easiest way, and really getting in touch with local practices and just making contact and getting yourself known, I think is helpful. I think that was something Amy Smallwood mentioned.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions in on locum deck. One from Dorothy King. Is there a way for a sessional GP in a given area to find out how much locum deck is used in their area to help them decide whether to sign up?
Absolutely. I will put a link in the chat now, which has got a link to all the data for every ICB for the last 5 years. But like I say, with locum deck, it's Metcalfe's law. It's your dad's fax machine thing. It's to get it up and going in an area takes a lot of effort. Once it's up and going, if you move to an area where it's in use a lot, fantastic. There are those 7 ICBs I mentioned. There are some ICBs. It's in Staffordshire. Don't know why Staffordshire. Also Shropshire. Also Devon and Cornwall. We've had no input there whatsoever. In Devon, though, the LMC actively promotes locum deck on its website. We didn't ask them to, they just did that spontaneously, and it's one of our busiest areas. And Cornwall is sort of being a neighbour has kind of got it sort of spread virally in there. But in Shropshire and Staffordshire, the local locums got together and they went out there and they got the practice to sign up to it, and it's now working fantastically for them. So I'd very much that one approach is to look for an area which uses it a lot, but I think it collectively, if you can get together, and that's what we're doing. We're getting. I can put that in the chat as well. But is getting people, getting your friends, getting your practices to use it as well.
And just on locum deck again, Mustafa has asked how can we join the locum deck for 12 months? Website only mentions 3 months free.
Yeah, so there you've got to have a special link which I can give you right now. Where are we? I'll put that in the chat as well. Like I say, I've got in Cheshire we've got 11 locums have signed up to this now. In Sheffield, where Amy Small is, we've got 20 locums signed up to using it. And they're having to go. They are actively going out and getting practices to sign up to the platform, and they're going onto the WhatsApp groups and saying, "Look, come on, rather than just send this email out and then wait for loads of us to apply, just sign up to Locum Deck and book us from there." And that seems to be working as well.
Fantastic. Different subject now. David Ward has asked, are people finding that safe working guidance for numbers of patients in a session are being applied to locum GPs, or are practices putting on longer clinics?
I'll take that one if you want me. Yeah. I think this is a little bit about what Richard mentioned about mindset. You are the locum doctor, you're the self-employed, you're agreeing terms with the practice, and whilst that can be difficult at the moment, you have to, it's not the as you say, the practice says you do this many. It's not like being salaried and you have your job plan. We hope, and in our guidance to sessional GPs, we put out around collective action that's going on in England at the moment and move towards safe working. As part of that, we hope practices can involve the entirety of who they're engaging, locums they hire, and your salaried GPs and the partners themselves taking a safe working route. So our guidance is that we hope practices would extend this kind of safe working limits. I know as a locum, I had that protection. I'd negotiated that with the practice I worked at when I was locuming, and I've continued that as a salaried GP. So working to safe guidance, it's all about having those discussions with your practices, and it is part of that collective action that ensures, one, we don't burn out, we can stay safe, we can care for our patients properly, and stay in the profession for as long as we can, rather than working well beyond what's safe and manageable, and burning out and saying, well, this is just not for me. Go on, Richard.
On locum deck, we've been looking through. About 50% of the sessions on locum deck are booked direct, so the practice manager clicks and books the locum, because the locum's put on the availability and the rates and the locum's terms. The other 50%, the locums manage themselves, because locum deck can, of course, also be used as your invoicing platform, where you put the sessions you've booked yourself. For sessions that have been booked instantly, where the locum has set the terms, the 86% of those sessions, of those 7,000 sessions a month, are 15-minute appointments, and the other and for the sessions that are booked manually by the locum that have organised itself, it's 64%. So because on locum deck, a locum makes themselves available for a session, they choose their practices, maybe 30 practices, they've got that session for next Tuesday afternoon, 15-minute appointments, and they set their rate, and then they've got basically the practices between them can choose the first one to book it, books the locum. Also, interestingly, is on locum, for those instant book sessions, they are the average session that's instant book is £12 more, 10% more, £12 more per hour on average than the sessions that have been booked manually. And the reason there is that sort of £10 or 12% gap is it's a balanced market. It's transparent, and the practices are they like just the ability to go online, see your lovely CV, your profile, read all about you, see your references, click and book, job done. That to them it takes a whole load of pain off them, and they can allow multiple people in a practice to do that. Trouble is with the old-fashioned methods like WhatsApp is it's one poor person's smartphone that they've got to send the message out, and they're the one who's then got to carry the brunt of answering those WhatsApp messages. So it's using a system that practices can do very easily. You're going to get you're more likely 25% more likely to get your 15-minute appointments. A safer way of working. Set your terms.
Thank you. We've got a few requests in the chat. William put in a little while ago to let us know what you want from the LMC as sessional GPs. Shana, you've popped in just very recently, interested to know how everyone feels about collective action. Please do pop your hand up, pop things in chat if you wish to share, either with what you would like from the LMC or collective action. William's also popped in here that Cheshire LMC welcomes observers at the business meetings. So please do get in touch with William if you want more information on that, and sessional GPs is a standing item. There was also a question put in around, again, this was from William, as an LMC, we promote the BMA model sessional GP contract, but some practices don't follow this 100%. Where there are contract offers, what do you advise colleagues look for? Can that go to Mark to start with, please?
Yeah, of course. So the salaried model contract is the kind of contract. It outlines all the terms and conditions you should expect from a contract as a salaried GP. And in the contract that partners hold with commissioners, it's in there that they have to offer terms no less favourable, is the wording used. So we wouldn't expect a contract to be less favourable than the salaried model contract. So it covers a range of different things, and we have lots of information. So we did something called Know Your Rights campaign last year as a committee to know what, as a sessional salaried GP, you should be looking for in your contract. One, if you're a BMA member, you can have your contract checked and get bespoke feedback, and they will tell you if it meets the salary model contract or not, what's been changed, if there's things missing. So it really enshrines your protections as an employee. So it covers things from parental leave. So recently we've pushed for a change to maternity pay leave, which has been agreed across the UK now. So previously ours lagged behind hospital doctors a bit. You've got 4 weeks less half pay than hospital colleagues, and we've changed that now, and that will be coming in from the 1st of April. So it outlines your kind of parental leave, sickness leave pay. One of the big things in there is uplifts to your pay. So there's the DDRB, the Doctors and Dental Pay Review Body, who make recommendations every year about how much doctors' pay should go up. And at all GPs, it's in the model contract, salary GPs should have that clause or something no less favourable in their contract. We do see it's a negotiation. I mean, there are things that you may be willing to change. So it covers things like continuous professional development time. So in the model contracts, you're talking 4 hours out of a 37.5-hour week should be dedicated to continued professional development time. Some people might be happy to accept a bit less than that for a bit higher pay. You know, there are, but as long as there's a mutual change, but you should expect the overall terms and conditions to be no less than the salaried model. But the BMA checking service, which is free if you're a member, is invaluable. We would always recommend that because they're complicated things. As GPs, we've been through national training with national contracts. We've never had to look at it, and it's a new thing that comes up. And it's something it's a bit alien to us all, but there's lots of guidance on the session through the sessional website and through BMA checking services.
Thank you. I know we're nearly out of time, but did you want to add anything to that briefly, Richard?
It's the BMA contract. The BMA are nice people. They're a big not-for-profit organisation. They spend a lot of time, a lot of hard work, got a massive agreement to do this fantastic contract. I mean, why wouldn't a practice want to use that? It's very, very, very fair. Years of consultation and adoption and really no problems with it whatsoever. So I think if you're going for a practice and they say, if you're booking an Airbnb and they say, oh, we don't use to be Airbnb, come use my terms and conditions, you're going to be a bit suspicious about your holiday. General practice is a very high stakes, complex, fast moving environment, and you don't want to be working in a practice where all of a sudden they whip out your contract and say, we've got a slight change we made, you know, the one you signed. So if a practice is offering something that's not along the BMA or certainly anything less than that, and then I think, you know, I know it's easy, it's not really, it's a difficult market at the moment, but I really would be very, very careful about it and take Mark's advice and definitely get it checked by the BMA if it's anything other than the BMA contract.
Thank you. I know we're rapidly running out of time, but William, you just responded to Curtin's question there, asking about the latest statistics. So there's not anything available at the moment for Cheshire, but I know William will be looking into that. So thank you to our speakers this evening. I'm just going to hand over to Shanna for a moment for any final words and anything that you would like to add that I've perhaps missed. I know William put in about the leaflet that's available to practices, but over to you, Shanna, for a few words.
Thank you, Helen, and to Mark and Richard. It's been a really great discussion. Lots of different things coming up there. As I said, my mind's buzzing now with lots of things, but we'll follow those up offline, I think. And I just wanted to say tonight is the first of a few outputs that are coming from the survey. Tonight is really about the bigger picture, and hopefully everyone's feeling much more informed. And I think even though it does feel a bit dark, you know, we've got to look for the light and we've got to create it for ourselves sometimes, and fight for it. Nothing comes easy that's worth fighting for. So, you know, it's really game on as far as I'm concerned. we are all here. We all have your back at every level. So whichever one you feel most comfortable with in terms of contacting, please do. We want to hear from you what your experiences are and how we can help you if you need it. Be empowered, be flexible, and please stay update and look for the opportunities. I am interested in knowing if people are parts of local sessional groups. I know in Chester, unfortunately, the Chester group, they're closed. And if there are any other groups that are running, then please let me know, because I'd love to sort of connect you all together. Mark touched on what Amy Small mentioned at the rally, and networking is absolutely invaluable because the opportunities for work can just pop up in with the most weirdest of places and just often through conversations. And you've got to be in it to win it. So, and we're all working together. No one's trying to stab each other in the back. So please, yeah, let's just try and hold hands a bit more. And we've got another couple of events in the offing. William will be mad if I don't mention them. So we've got in our sessional development program, we've got a couple more things that are coming online, and we'll send details out in due course, and they're a bit more sort of personalised and face to face as well. And then really it's just left for me to say thank you very much to everyone. Firstly to Mark and Richard for giving your time tonight and your expertise. It's very, very gratefully received, and I hope we can do it again in the future. To our attendees, everyone who's attended tonight and given your evening, I hope it's been worth your while. Please do feedback for us so we can learn from it too. And to the PCC team, of course, to Helen, Casey and Sam, who's not on the call tonight, but they've been brilliant at helping us coordinate tonight. There's always a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. And finally, to my colleagues at the executive team at the LMC, William, Daniel and David, who are here tonight, and Julie, who has done a lot behind the scenes work with me as well. So thank you. Have a good rest of the evening, what's left of it. And yeah, time for a drink, I think, of tea.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
It's
you.
just a pleasure to support you again. Thank you.
Thanks for
Goodbye
organising.
now.
Bye-bye.